Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you're currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Arwin, Neil, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
good afternoon.
Hey, hey, hey. Enthusiastic like the warm-up worked in the pre-show.
Yes.
Happy days. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe everyone still needs a bit of warming up. We'll warm up with housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Yeah, that's not gonna warm me up though.
Okay, fine. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? How's that
Well,
for warm?
If it would exist, then I guess it would warm me up, but it doesn't, so that doesn't warm me up either.
Or maybe
But-
there's somebody in chat in Discord that has some evidence of any of these housekeeping questions.
That goes without
Ooh.
saying, right? This is a public show. Let's make this absolutely clear. If you want to challenge anything that is stated here, you being the listener, right now I'm talking to you, right? If you want to listen, you can. If you want to join in and participate, you can. If you want to chat and argue from the peanut gallery, you can. You can do all of those things if you want to. Any
It's
evidence
all
of-
about freedom.
I just want to offer the opportunity. We're debunking the greatest deception in mankind's history as far as I am concerned. Now, that is a bold thing to do. Now, I am so confident in my annihilation of the heliocentric model from my own perception that I will stand by it to the tune of anybody being able to challenge it at any time I'm speaking live or recorded that will later be broadcast. So, yeah, you don't agree with me? Yeah, there's a reason I offer a link. That's why. Not many people do that.
Well, after grindings like happened on Monday, people do get a little scared. And they just start to make up excuses. Like there was this guy in my chat today who constantly insisted that the Foucault pendulum did have like precession deviation because the Earth spin underneath it. But I pretty much spent 15 minutes trying to explain to him that that he was trying to reverse the burden of proof and make us prove that that didn't happen, while he was the one making the positive claim, and even suggested, like, dude, go on Nathan. You're so passionate about this. Why don't you go on Nathan through Discord? But he declined because you were too rude.
Depends who you are. Typically, people will listen to any of the cut-out sections and go, God, he's so rude. It's like, yeah, well, that's 3 hours in. If you listen to the start, typically I'm perfectly reasonable with people until you start to challenge what they've just put down, or in most cases, it's not even challenge it. Just restating it back to them will result in them interrupting you constantly, which gets very irritating very quickly. Now, at the point that I rip their arsehole through their own throat, I'm going to be pretty harsh with them, especially if they come like the guy on whatever day it was, Monday, where he's so confident in his ability to prove a sphere that he's just here to collect his money for it. You know, he's later saying, well, this isn't a game or a competition to me, lying through his back teeth, because the only purpose in being here is because he thinks he can win Bitcoin. So these people think it's a game. Oh yeah, I know I'm on a sphere. So much so, I can go to a flat earther and demand money from them, based on my knowing how much I'm on a sphere. Yeah, mate, those people, that type of arrogance, they get the most severe tongue lashing.
Right, but you don't give it to them right away. I was listening carefully back to the premiere, which was playing last night, by the way, from Monday, and sat through it from the beginning. And it really does stand out that you have a very stable mood growth because you were extremely patient for like the entire first hour, like really patient. And then just kept on going and going. And then gradually you built it up until in the end when you got really rough on him. But that was after 3 hours. And the build up to that was very linear. So yeah, that's pretty special.
It's frustrating to hear somebody assert that they can beg the question of gravity, which in that example is gas going down 9.8 meters per second squared. And he can confidently reassert that after it's been ripped to shreds. I think it was 15 times. Now, I lost count because I was like, is that the 10th time? Is that the 11th time that I actually counted verbally and was recorded or broadcast? But it was more than that, considerably more than that. But regardless of how well or how concisely or how much he conceded or how much he detailed, literally, to quote him, gas will fill the availability of space. Gas will fill the availability of volume for the container. Those were quotes from him. So he's agreeing with us, and yet, but I'm going to assume gas go down, go boom, boom, 9.8 meters per second. When it gets to about the 6th time, my patience are at an end for that crap. What, repeating the same rebuttal again and again that has not been overcome, i.e. gas isn't going down 9.8 meters per second, it's expanding in all directions. Do you think that's reasonable, as he was telling me, as I'm getting stroppy with him, that he's just come for a reasonable discussion? Yet, he's repeated the same thing that's been conceded by him in excess of 15 times. Do you think that's not going to get you shouted at eventually? Because it's downright irritating to any normal person. In any circumstance, not just flat earth versus globe earth debate.
Yeah,
You're
but there's
right,
got to be
absolutely.
there has to be a point where they concede and they shouldn't be allowed to go back to it. There's got to be some rules. If it's debunked, you are not allowed to go back to this unless you prove otherwise. And after 3 hours, the hippo bites.
I'd like to point out something that that guy was doing the other day. And it's something that I had a thing with Rumpus against Rumpus on Brandon's recently, where he lost the plot with me because I started calling out something that was very obvious to me, but maybe not obvious to everyone else that Rumpus deals with. They keep on taking, right, PV equals nRT, and they explain things talking about the T, right, to do with gas behavior. They explain gas behavior and start talking about the T, how temperature is involved, how temperature controls gas behavior, right? But then they switch the T for a G and turn it into PV equals nRG, right? And that's what this guy was trying to do the other day. He talked about this stupid example that I've heard of from them before. One gas particle, right, in a container, right? What is that going to do? Right, for a start, that means he doesn't understand, and I said this last night in QEs, and he totally agreed with me, that they don't understand gas behavior when they start bringing up one gas particle. Gas, right, is unbonded. That means if you have 1 or 100 billion particles, they're all independent entities. So he tried to bring up the example of one gas particle in a container, and then he said it loses kinetic energy when it collides off the walls of the container. And then you corrected him and said, no, it does not. Elastic collisions, they don't lose kinetic energy with collisions off each other or anything, any surface, the container, anything, right? And he said, but if the container is a little bit colder, they will lose kinetic energy. This is the rubbish he started. And I was screaming at the phone because I was listening to this afterwards. I wasn't listening to it live. It's like, no, right? That is complete and utter rubbish. What is taking the kinetic energy? Is it the collision or the temperature change? Right? It's the temperature change because the collision will happen anyway. Right? But without the temperature change, there won't be any change in kinetic energy. Cold takes kinetic energy, heat gives kinetic energy. That's how it works. So he was trying to bring gravity into it all the time. And when gas behavior came up, he brought in some talk about temperature, right? And Arwen tried to correct him when he started talking about the sky, right? About his atmosphere, right? Arwen tried to correct him a couple of times and bring temperature into it. And eventually he brought temperature into it very briefly, but then it came back to gravity, force of gravity causing this weight of atmosphere. If we have this weight of air on top of us, right, caused by a force of gravity, then explain to me why things are heavier in a vacuum. It is over.
Right. Sorry, if we have gas go down, go boom, boom, weight is heavier in a yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that if there's... Well, just explain it again. I can't summarise it well enough.
Objects are heavier in a vacuum. They should be lighter. If gravity was real, a force of gravity was real, and a force of gravity caused air to have weight, right? Can't be done. It's nonsense. But if this was all true, then objects should be lighter in a vacuum. They're heavier in a vacuum. Objects get heavier in lower pressures.
Right, because the medium's density is further away from the object's density in a vacuum because it's less dense than regular air pressure. Yeah.
Solid objects.
Well,
solid objects.
The air is giving a certain amount of actual physical matter support to whatever, just like you will in water. If you dive into water, the water will give you more support than air, right? If you lie on concrete, it'll give you total support. Jump into water, you will float somewhat. In air, you won't float away. You won't float up in the air, but it does give you a certain amount of float, a certain amount of lift, whatever you want to call it, right? A certain amount of support, right? When you take that support away, then you don't have that extra lift, so you get heavier in a vacuum. So there is no force of gravity.
Yeah, support's a bad word. And I know what you're saying, because in effect what you're saying is the gas is still pressing on you, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but the air is a medium and air is a fluid. So it does give you use whatever word you want to use, but I like the word support myself, is that it gives you a certain amount of support. So when you don't have it, you get heavier. So in a vacuum, right, your table will be heavier in a vacuum chamber than it will outside the vacuum chamber.
I would just call it pressure. It presses against you. It will prevent you from falling down harder.
Sure, but I think Brian's pointing out that their point is the opposite of that, right? They're saying you'll get lighter. Yeah,
well, there has to in their model. Things have to. Didn't they show men bouncing around on the moon, being 1/6 of their weight? The whole point is that their claim is that we have this pressure gradient and we have all this weight of air on top of us, making everything heavier. When you take that air away, you're supposed to get lighter, but that doesn't happen in reality. You get heavier without that air.
Right. If we assume gas go down, go boom, boom.
Well, we don't have to assume it because it's not real.
No, I know, but I'm saying... No, of course not. But I'm saying in your example that you're laying out for them, which is their description of how you have a homogeneous layer, as you described it, pressing down or giving weight. That's down. So that's a layer of gas going down, go boom, boom. They say it's with gravity. So that's gas going down 9.8 meters per second. So if we assume gas go down, go boom, boom, in a homogeneous layer, as they describe, I stop there. The reason I'm bringing this up is because that's, well, you've heard, right? That's where I cut it off. No, I'm not going to assume gas go down, go boom, boom. It doesn't do that.
No, but that's the point. It's like they need gas to have weight for their pressure gradient, right? That's all based around that. The whole pressure gradient is based around air having weight. They say that a helium balloon goes up because of all the air that gravity is pushing down.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
Right, this
Right,
is what
weight
they
is
say.
down.
Right.
So, yeah. So they're saying air must have weight. So air must be going down. So gas go down, go boom, boom.
But it doesn't, because things weigh more in a vacuum chamber.
Well, it
Do you
doesn't because...
understand
Well, I do get your point. But, prior to that, you just, gas doesn't go down. You're I hate to say this, you're doing an anti-Riley. You're working within their paradigm where they assume that we have a homogeneous layer of gas going down, go boom, boom, 9.8 meters per second with gravity. We don't. But you're saying if we did, then you're saying that there's more weight on us at ground level. And if you remove that, then you'd weigh less in that paradigm with gas going down, go boom, boom.
They got to demonstrate
it's more of
going down first.
It's more of a modus ponens. If gravity is a force, then oil will weigh less in a vacuum. I don't weigh less in a vacuum, so gravity is not a force.
Fair enough. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
If you ignore all gas in the description, that's perfect, in fact.
Yeah, well, whichever way you want to do it, I don't mind. The whole point is that there is no force of gravity because a vacuum proves that there isn't.
Yeah, remove the gas. No gas. Well, then, what's going on in terms of your assertion? Oh, nothing changes. For a solid.
What I dealt with them, because this is on one of my shorts that I brought out, was that I had people telling me, "No, you don't understand. It's buoyancy." So I said, "So you're relinquishing the claim that gravity is causing weight to have air and that there is a pressure gradient?"
No, they're not. No, that's incorrect. Buoyancy also assumes gravity. Look it up. So when they say buoyancy...
I know that.
Just let me tell you. Buoyancy, you've already described. So when you said the gas around the gas that's going up, going down, so you've got helium going up, and they go, no, it goes up because it's displaced by the gas going down, forcing it down, go boom, boom, layer, 9.8 meters per second assumed. Well, that gas has got to be going down around the gas that's going up, right? That's buoyancy. Well, no, because that means the gas is going down, go boom, boom, because they assume gravity in buoyancy.
Yes, but the people who were using buoyancy when they were speaking to me, they were talking about buoyancy being not gas going down, but gas having an uplifting effect. So they literally were they weren't talking about buoyancy, they thought they were. But when they tried to bring that into the equation, I just said, so you're relinquishing that gravity causes a pressure gradient. They have nowhere to go with this. They have nothing to go, because the reality is things get heavier and low pressures. That's all that matters, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess. Or that we've got gas pressure in the first place. Any evidence you can have gas pressure in the first place without a container?
Pools of helium.
No.
QE played that last night at the beginning of his show, so QE liked that and trimmed it out and played it right at the beginning of his live show.
It was hilarious.
On that note, if you create a vacuum chamber here on Earth and you introduce a gas particle in it, number one, you've created a container to have a vacuum, or else you couldn't have one. That flies in their face. Number two, what would that single gas particle do in that chamber? That's just vacuum and one gas particle. And then what would happen if you introduce a second one? Do they sit down and take a nap?
No, they bounce around inside the chamber, moving at high velocities. Occasionally,
So
very
then-
unlikely if there's only two, but occasionally they'll bounce off each other.
All right. So take that out to its end, then assume you introduce a lot of it and apply a dynamic system to it where it's cold and heat and everything in between. What would that be?
Dynamic system inside a pressurized container?
Well, welcome to Flat Earth then.
Indeed. But they need us to assume, as he stated, that gas sits on Earth. No, it doesn't. It moves around at high speed, high velocity, all directions, in whatever vector it's travelling, unless it collides with something. If it doesn't collide with something, it just carries on in that direction. And that's
Well,
the
then
end
we're
of their
back to-
argument and position that they've got a sky vacuum. The space that they think is above their head isn't real when it's described as being 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum for travel through. There's no space. There's no outer space. There's no trips to Mars. There's no trips to the moon, because the journey takes place in a second law of thermodynamics violation. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. Shout out to
What
Bobby.
about the rebellious? What about the rebellious gas particles that just decided to go and squat in their region? Like, no, we're staying here, not paying rent. We're just gonna stay here.
What were they
Can't
rebelling
get past
against?
it.
Rebellious. What are they rebelling against, Darwin?
Natural law.
yeah. What law? The laws that describe things that occur always, you mean?
Well, they should be.
Unless the gas particles become sentient and rebel against natural law. Yes, indeed. Shout out to Bobby Zines, who says, think how the entertainment industry would change as everyone donated to their favourite YouTubers rather than pay for Netflix and Amazon. Keep it up, guys. If people want to pay for Amazon, that's their bag. But I really appreciate your support, Bobby Zines. Thank you very much indeed to you.
I have a question. It might be dumb.
I doubt it'll be dumb, Eric. Go ahead.
How much pressure? Okay, I'm trying to think about how much pressure would a gas particle need in the opposite direction in order for it to bounce backwards? Because if you have one gas particle and it's traveling in a direction and it collides with something, why doesn't it go through it? Like, how much pressure on that side would it need to go back the other way? Could it go through whatever it's hitting? I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying.
That's irrelevant. So the pressure is quantified by sort of how many and how much space, Boyle's law, if you will. But when it collides with something, or even with another gas particle inside, I can't answer the question in terms of why it won't smash straight through it. That bit I can't answer. I don't know the answer to that. But in terms of the amount of pressure, well, that's just the quantity in a given area. So each of the individual particles just hits another particle or the walls at a certain regularity, depending on how many are in there. And that's how you qualify the quote-unquote pressure. So how much pressure does each particle? Well, that can be affected by if you change the temperature, for example. So if you heat it up, it'll move faster. Therefore, because it's moving faster, it's going to collide more often with the walls of the container and therefore increase the pressure. But how much to do that? Well, it would do it at all stages of being a gas. If there's something to collide with, it just collides with it and changes its vector.
The reason I'm thinking about that is because they move at high speeds, right? Like, they're really, really fast and they're a tiny particle. So like I'm just thinking about if your container was a piece of paper, it can bounce off that side of the piece of paper, but I'm thinking, like, how small can the thing get that it's pressurizing off of, to where now the gas particle's speed is faster than the pressure that it can receive from whatever.
Sure, but now you're asking about it sounds like your question's more about tensile strength of a solid than it is about the gas. Because if you had a paper balloon and it was theoretically sealed, so you could pump more and more pressure into it, eventually the number of collisions with the walls, which in that case are paper, would exceed the tensile strength of the paper, and the gas would escape, burst through, whatever. Like when you bang a paper bag, it'll go bang, and at some point the weak spot in the paper bag will let go, and the increased pressure then comes out and equalizes, hence the bang. But describing it as how much pressure is required to do that. Well, it doesn't really work that way. You're applying Boyle's law and decreasing the size of the container to increase the pressure to then overcome the tensile strength of the bag. Hope that helps.
Or are you trying to ask, when they're colliding, will they go back down as well as other directions?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to ask?
If that's what you're asking, yes. They collide with a container and they'll go back down in the opposite direction. No worries.
Actually, it just blows my mind that somehow like it's got perpetual motion when they say things aren't supposed to have perpetual motion. So my mind is thinking like if it has perpetual motion, it can keep moving forever and ever. Like if it hits something, I don't know. I feel like you could like harness it, and you could harness gas and make a perpetual motion machine because like whatever the pressure, so the gas particle is going super fast. It can hit something, but if that thing that it hits is light enough, it should be able to spin it, right? Like or
see.
push it out of the way. And
No, I get
Harnessing
where you're going.
gas.
I get where you're going. Other than the moment you try and utilize it, there's going to be a net energy loss, and the perpetual aspect of it is lost. But I understand what you're saying. You're saying, well, given all things being equal, the gas would just continue being gas, and by its nature, it's moving around at a high speed and having elastic collisions. So therefore, it's just going to keep bouncing around. Isn't that just perpetual energy? Well, you could look at it in that way, but you're looking at it in the way of how can I harness it?
It's called wind turbines.
No, they're not utilizing. No. What's being described is not a utilization of the dynamic system that we're being presented with in our contained, beautiful flat plane that we dwell atop. He's asking, in equilibrium, yeah, let's go back to the Fundy example. One gas particle is just released into a container. Everything's kept the same. It'll just bounce around indefinitely. And he's saying, well, that's perpetual energy. It's never stopping. No, it's not. It's just bouncing around in equilibrium, quite happily, with elastic collisions. So he's saying, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, the beauty of our world is amazing when you just have a little look, eh? But how do you harness it? That's what he's really asking.
Well, then the way the wind turbines harnesses, they got a generator. And when the wind is strong enough, it turns the blade, and the blade activates the generator.
Yeah, that's utilizing a dynamic system, though, isn't it?
It's
No,
not
no.
harnessing it, it's using it.
Okay. We're obviously not going to get back onto the same wire in this regard, so I don't think that's what he's asking about. Yes, we have wind turbines.
I know that's not what I'm trying to express, that within what he's saying, unless you have something that converts it, it's just bouncing around.
Indeed.
yeah, what I'm saying is if there was a container that just had gas in it.
Hold on,
It
Eric.
was like,
Eric,
you know,
can you drop and rejoin? You're all fuzzy and stuff. I don't know why. If you join the live stream queue, I'll put you back in if you can't get in.
Yeah, but Nathan, I hear that too. Like when you say they bounce in all directions, I heard somebody say that, yeah, that means they go back down. So Nathan says gas don't go down.
All directions would include down.
Let Eric
Hey,
get his... Hold on, Eric's back. Can you just let him get his point through? Or just move him back in. Hold on. Move to live stream. Then is he on mute? No. Eric, feel free to continue.
Sorry, can you hear me better?
Perfect now.
So what I'm saying, Nathan, you got it right. So like I'm just like concepting in my mind like a container that has nothing in it except for gas. The gas is bouncing around, and then it has perpetual motion. So those little tiny gas particles, if you could like have them, because they're always bouncing around, hit something that could spin, like in my mind, to generate a power, like you could somehow get perpetual energy from that. That's what I'm thinking. I know it's like kind of silly, but
Yeah. Do you want to know the problem? The thing that thwarts that is entropy. And entropy is the change that will occur with time. And no matter what you do, entropy is absolute.
Sorry for cutting on you, Nathan. But this actually does take place in nature. That's why it allows us to have a dynamic system. This takes place between the tropics with the sun. Because the path of the sun means that constantly between the tropics, without fail, all the time, the most amount of convection within the air is taking place. So there is more warm air rising between the tropics all the time, non-stop, than any other part of the world due to the sun. So as long as the sun continues to give the heat and energy, or whatever you want to way to term it, to the air, that air will constantly be rising and falling and rising and falling, warm up, cool down, warm up, cool down. That'll
Or
constantly be happening.
yeah, or to put it another way, the sun is the biggest entropy generator known to man.
Yes.
But that's what I said. It's developing entropy. So the chances of equilibrium are pretty slim because we're constantly going to have entropy.
Yeah, well, if the sun, thing about it is that the sun never stays in one position. It's constantly changing its position above us day by day. So it never stays. Like, it's only over what they call the Tropic of Cancer at the 21st of June, and over the Tropic of Capricorn on the 21st of December, and then over the equator in September and March. September 23rd and March 21st. So it's never staying in the one place. It's always moving. So that even as a system that's constant, the system is still always changing. What I mean by when the sun is around the Tropic of Cancer, there's going to be a bit more convection, a bit of a higher convection rate there than there will be over the Tropic of Capricorn, simply because there will be more heat.
Fair enough. Quick shout out to Slow Mo Moonbuggy. He says, good times, thanks. I think in response to being suggested that people should smash the super chat and support me. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Slow Mo Moonbuggy. As we're talking about the sun, any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Nope. It's 3 Arwinian units.
It's in the sky.
Thank you,
wherever
chocolate.
it is.
Anytime.
Oh, by the way, Nathan, I have a bit of a news flash. Apparently, William Shatner is going in the Blue Origin launch in 45 minutes.
Blue
I put a
Origin?
link in the chat.
What's Blue
Yeah.
Origin? Is that the penis rocket?
That's Bezos' thing.
Ah,
Remember?
the penis rocket.
Penis rocket. Yeah.
I see. William Shatner's going in a penis rocket. Where's it going
Yeah.
in it? Where does he think he's going in it?
Well, to science fiction, because that's exactly the same as reality. Remember? So he
Yeah,
knows what he's doing.
He was asked once, William Shatner was once asked, what's the difference between science fiction and science fact? And his answer was nothing. Quote, nothing. There is no difference.
It'd be hilarious if he came back down and said, hey, it looks flat.
He did say that. He said it in a TV show.
Ooh.
He goes up high, broadcasts back to base control saying, it's flat. The Earth is flat. I'm looking across Earth and it's flat. And they're all at base control going, he's such a joker.
Yeah, they'll say he's spaced out for a second.
But you didn't answer me, Alwyn. Where does he think he's going? Do we know where he believes to be going on the Origin trip in the penis rocket?
I haven't seen any press conference statements from him about it yet. It was just brought to my attention by somebody in chat just now. So I don't know what he said about it, but yeah, it's probably going to be the same. It's just like a wild ride high up there.
Up
Well, it
there.
doesn't matter what he
Hold
says.
on. Up there. Can you be a bit more specific? Where's there?
High up in the air.
High up in the air. Okay, so he's going high up in the air. Why is this on the news again?
Yeah, exactly. Because when you read about the story of him from a week ago, it's just high altitude. He's not going into second law violation called space. He's not orbiting anything. They even say it.
Okay, so apparently in 2021, newsworthy information is that an old fat ex-sci-fi actor is going up high in a penis. Well, that's great. I
Hey.
mean, that's why I don't watch news anymore.
William Shatner is awesome.
They're calling it a suborbital Joyride.
Suborbital.
Sorry, pre-begging the question, fallacy of orbital motion. So,
Exactly.
William Shatner killed his own wife.
in what dramatization? If not, allegedly would be preferable so the lawyers don't get in touch?
Look it up.
Allegedly. That doesn't save me from the lawyers. Just saying
Wait.
allegedly won't
He
save me.
He
Of what-
allegedly killed too?
No,
Can
that means
we
look
change the
it up and
subject?
don't talk
Hello,
about it.
hello. This alleged crime that may or may not have been committed or even claimed to have been committed in respect to William Shatner, that's not the nature of the show. I'm sorry. If you're watching William Shatner, I'm sorry. Because, of course, William Shatner will be watching Flat Earth Debate.
Of course.
He will when he hears about these allegations. So moving on, he's not going to a second law of thermodynamics violation. Sky vacuum, thank you very much indeed, 10th man. Correct.
It violates natural law.
Well, every one of these, that was it, this would be the third within like a month and a half now of people. First it was Branson, then it was some billionaires, and then now it's William Shatner. So it's like you read the stories that lead up to the actual event and they say what Chocolate said. It's suborbital and they're just high up. They're not in space.
Yeah, they can't be. I mean, obviously the private enterprises that are putting these on are tentative, shall we say, about lying about where they're going. Because they could just lie. Yeah, we're going to space. Why not?
Well,
Who's looking at the altimeter from the passenger seats in the back? Nobody.
Look at the picture you got up right now with Superman over a globe. This is what they do. They use orthographic picturing, illustrations. Someone's going up high in the sky in the rocket. And of course, they'll use pictures and all the embedded psychology over the years that once you go up there, you see curvature, which you don't, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson. And then it just, so there you go. He actually went to space for the first time, and it's not on a Hollywood studio. No. Read the article. All you got to do is show a picture to this dumbed down society of ours.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Oh, sorry. I think there's actually a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson even mentioning that many of these astronauts who say they're going to space, in reality, they're not going to deep space. They're going to low Earth orbit, which even that's questionable. But he even admits it that they haven't gone to deep space ever since the quote unquote Apollo moon landings. So it's just crazy.
Well, that's not even deep space because that's within our atmosphere, I heard.
Atmo what now?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. The words, the pictures, and people believe it.
So, no evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container then?
2 containers.
Right, let's move it on. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
You're going to need all for that.
Well, if there was, Baumgartner would have landed in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, we would have observed him drifting from our vantage point on a turning Earth, because that's what Coriolis deflection is. Us observing something that leaves the turning reference frame drift at 15 degrees an hour according to the claim that the globe is spinning with a Coriolis deflection to observe. We don't observe Coriolis deflection. Nothing is drifting away from us on the ground as we turn beneath it. Therefore, Earth isn't spinning. Shout out to James Richards. The sky is certainly not a vacuum. However, as a flat earther, I do believe they're holding truth in unrighteousness as to what is truly going on. Maybe. But just now I know they're liars, I don't want to appeal to them. I don't want to ask them for fear of their response just being another lie. So they might. But once you ascertain that somebody's lying to you on a grand scale, do you continue to appeal to the same people because you suspect they might know the truth? I would say not. I'd say you're far better off just disconnecting from those people because they'll just lie to you again. Once bitten, twice shy.
Can we go back to Felix Baumgartner for a minute? And can I point out the psychology that's used on the average consumer of this news?
Feel free.
When that happened, called the friend who was fighting Flat Earth, and he brought it up, actually. And he said, look, I watched that Felix Baumgartner, and it shows the curvature of the Earth. And I said, well, that's nice. What you saw was the effects of a lens of a camera. But I've got a bigger question for you than the Hollywood techniques they use to show Earth is curving when it's not. And he goes, what's that? And I said, how long did it take him to get up there? And then what was the total time from liftoff to actually landing on the ground? The Earth is turning, right? In your model? Yeah. Well, then why did he land east when he should have been somewhere in the Pacific Ocean? Did the Earth stop turning? You're so worried about your fisheye lens globe that you forgot that the Earth should have turned under him.
Also, the horizon is not Earth curve. We've debunked it. Black Swan. If the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to horizon, that would be the geometric Earth curve edge he thinks is curving in this fisheye lens, could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, and the Black Swan shows it's beyond that physical geometric limitation laid down by a claim of a sphere radius 3959. The horizon is not Earth curve.
But do you notice the lack of critical thinking when you they point out one part of what they think is proof, curvature caused by fisheye lens, and you say, what about the other part of your model? Was the Earth turning or did it stop? No, it's turning. Well, then where should he have landed?
You're asking too much, man. You want them to make two arguments at the same time? Come on.
Is that too much chocolate for them?
Yes.
That's quite derogatory.
So
I mean, do you
cancel
believe
a
that?
baller?
Do you believe that, Chocolate? In all sincerity, do you think that they're inferior in their cognitive faculties?
Some of them, yeah. Some of them, I think, willingly. Because in order to ignore one thing and then just try to concentrate on another, I mean, what Tim said should have automatically told the guy that he's wrong. But he's like, nope, it's good. Everything works out, checks out.
Fair enough. Hey, ballers, Chocolate's calling you thick. How about it?
Yep. I'm in a meeting, by the way. That's why I can't talk.
That's actually a compliment.
But hang on, you're multitasking and the ballers can't?
Can't believe you're getting away with responding to us while you're in a meeting.
Hey, flat earthers can do so many things.
We cover all the housekeeping questions. No, we didn't. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
What is gravity?
On the vacuum.
No gas go down, go boom, boom, 9.8 meters per second per second.
It was a heavy subject at one time.
It was multi-layered.
This is where the cognitive dissonance starts for people who fight it. they know reality. They know what they observe and repeat each day. And then when they apply it to their model, there's a big disconnect. And then instead of going with, what they know and challenge and search and make sure that what the narrative is being fed to them is based on a bunch of fallacies and lies, they just get stuck. Well, I know you can't have gas pressure without container, but we must, because there's all those planets and space travel and everything else.
Some people don't want to be unplugged, Tent.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
About any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Well, they got to have a viable hypothesis, right?
That's what we're asking for. Shocking, isn't it? All the claims we used to hear of science. Well, that concludes the housekeeping. Remember back in the day when
And they
we used
called
to...
us science.
Go on, Neil.
They
Science
called us
deniers.
science deniers. Yep.
Yeah, project your weakest argument onto your opponent. Oi, flat earther, you think boats fall over an edge? Ha ha ha. I reify the horizon into an edge and I have my boats falling over that. So take that. Science denier. Yeah, right. What science? There isn't any science for a sphere Earth. It's a non-existent claim. There isn't any. We've been asking for a good 2 years.
And here's poor science not proving anything anymore in 2021. What a shame.
Also an outrage, because science does prove things. It's all it's doing if you actually apply the method. So all it's going to do is prove the cause of your effect or cause that you haven't guessed correctly in your supposition of cause. That would be the null, if A, not B. But one or other of those definitely gets proven at the end of the process. So all science does is prove things. The pseudoscience claimant, who doesn't actually have any science, and when that's pointed out to them, will then say science doesn't prove anything. Meaning or translation being, my claim of quote-unquote science wasn't science, it was pseudoscience, and pseudoscience, as claimed by me, doesn't prove anything.
Wait a minute.
Have an issue with this argument, Nathan.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, is it just a semantic argument that they're presenting and how they use the word proof?
You'll have to tell me in that respect what argument that they're presenting.
Because like when they say science doesn't prove anything, they refer to like the numbers, mathematical proofs or logical proofs, saying science doesn't have those things.
All it has is proof. At the end of the method of science, something's getting proven.
I'd like to remind our guest who's asking this question that all you hear lately is the science backs this. The science proves this. Look at the science. Well, then what are they trying to say by inserting the word science when they're pushing something?
Also true. Is that what you're driving at, the hammer? Hold on, everyone else. Go ahead, the hammer. Is that what you're driving at or not? Clarify if not.
I don't know. I don't know if that's necessary. I just feel like it's a semantic argument. Like they're just using the word proof And I feel like the way that the flat earth side may be using the word proof, they just mean evidence. I understand it's used a lot, the word proof, as far as in science, but like,
So why did they spend all that time telling us how they have science that proves the globe 4 or 5 years ago, and now all of a sudden those same people are telling us science does not prove things? Do you see the problem
well,
with that?
when you say they, are you talking about like most of these clowns and jokers that claim that they're pseudo professors and stuff on the internet? Or are you talking about like legitimate scientists and stuff?
Anybody that makes a claim of a globe and then at any stage of that claim makes the claim that it's scientific in any way, shape or form. Anybody at all saying that.
Well, like you've been saying recently, most of these people are just common Joes like you and I, right? That have just been told the story. Mm-hmm. So they're misspeaking, I think, a lot of the time when they use that word.
Sure, but when you disprove something that is claimed to be science, and the declaration follows that science doesn't actually prove anything, or further to that, science only disproves things of that nature, I just want to focus on that particular aspect for a second. The process includes something that has a violation of the law of non-contradiction if you don't accept that it proves things. So, in the hypothesis you have if A then B. So if I do this, that's A, B will happen. That's if A, then B. It also has if A, I do this, the same thing as before, B will not happen. Now, both of those two scenarios cannot simultaneously exist. You can't vary A and have it cause B, and vary A and have it not cause B. Both things can't happen simultaneously. Yeah? Now, that's full hypothesis construction. If A, then B is an alternative hypothesis. If A, not B is a null hypothesis, and both are mandatory in a hypothesis. So that when you actualize that hypothesis, that is to say, if A, I vary A, I actually vary A. I manipulate something physically. This is an experiment. At the end of that physical manipulation of A, one of two things can happen. Number one, nothing happens. That's if A, not B. I vary A, sod all happens. I have just proven my null hypothesis. My null hypothesis, my supposition in the null, is if A, not B. So I vary A, and B does not happen. So I vary A, B does not happen. I've just proven that null. It was proven. Now, by contradiction, or the opposite of that, is the alternative. I vary A, and B does happen. Now, those are the only two outcomes at the end of the actualization. If I vary A, it can either cause B or not cause B. Only those two things. But no matter which one happens, or doesn't happen, I have proven something. Ipso facto, at the end of the process, something will be proven. So it is unquestionable that proof is going to be had at the end of this process. That goes without question. So what is that in terms of a word, a description of that? That word is empirical. The outcome is empirical, because if A not B cannot be contradicted by the only other choice. If A, then B. You can't have both. One will be proven. Just to summarise the point of describing all this, if somebody who has been proven wrong when they've said, my science proved that Dunlop tyres do grip better, and you prove that they haven't had a viable hypothesis to offer for this non-natural phenomena they're describing as being science, and they go, well, science doesn't prove anything, it can only disprove things. You go, no, its only purpose is to prove the cause of natural phenomena. It is empirical and will prove something at the end of the process because it has a null hypothesis.
And
My
if you
only thought on
disprove
that is
something,
that. Oh, go ahead, buddy.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm just curious, is it possible that in our example there that we didn't account for certain variables that could have affected the dependent variable?
Then
And
you
I may
didn't.
be
Yeah,
saying that
yeah.
incorrectly, but is it possible that we didn't account for everything?
Then you
know
didn't
what
have
I
a
mean?
viable
Like,
hypothesis. Yes, that's correct. And that is why the process isn't only done once, it's systematic experimentation. And the hypothesis has to be valid to begin with. All other things extraneous to the presumed cause must be held constant. Now, typically, because it's not really necessary, it's assumed anyway, we don't mention CV. That would be control variables. Confusing title, I know. Control, meaning they're kept constant. That's all you need to know. Variables, because they could be varied, but they're being held constant, so as to not affect the outcome. Now, if you've got stuff that is being varied while you're varying your independent variable, then guess what? The independent variable isn't independent then. So it's not a viable hypothesis in that scenario. But you're right to quiz it in that way, because yes, you've got to be rigorous in your definition of what is going to be controlled, what is going to be varied as a result of your independent variable being varied.
So I think that's kind of where they kind of go like back and forth a little bit, where they say, yes, we've proven this, or we have a bunch of evidence that shows this, but they still kind of leave the door open saying it's possible that this could be wrong in the future shown.
Well, that's
new
semantics.
information.
That's semantics, because evidence is proof.
And that's
think
kind of my point, is that they try to play this semantic argument with us, saying that science doesn't prove things.
I think I know where he's going. In the past, things were called science. Later, they were shown not to be. So they're using what history shows as people thinking this was the cause of something, and then later, oh no, we were wrong. But it was done within a lab coat type of a thing. And what Nathan is saying, which is true, is that if it was ever, meaning the scientific method applied properly in the first place, it could never have another. It would never change. And so they're using all of the phony science that's been discovered to be phony science, pseudoscience, and they're saying, see, science doesn't prove things. No.
Exactly.
If it was done properly with the scientific method, with a EV, IV, CV, and everything, and rigorous experimentation, it's done. It's over.
Exactly. Upon the exposure of their pseudoscience claim, they throw the actual scientific method under the bus. But with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you first and foremost to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you tuned in. Smash the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!